Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. Coming up on the show, Matt Moore will give his NBA State of the Union address. We'll also talk everything NFL with Chad Millman and Simon Hunter. But we start with Monday Night Football and the prop market. It's an all Jags type of day for the public, especially when it comes to Travis Etienne. His first touchdown, anytime touchdown, and over 2.5 receptions are 3 of the 5 most bet props at MGM. But buyer beware, the Jaguars are optimistic Etienne will play, though listed as questionable with a rib injury. With that, we welcome in Sean Koerner, and Nick Giffen is keeping me company in studio today. How you feeling?
Doing great.
I know Sean's a little jealous that he can't be with us here in the studio. So Sean, I'll ask you first. How are you approaching Etienne from a betting perspective?
Well, I'm staying away because this is a very tricky situation. I mean, he is expected to play through this rib injury, but after having a massive workload in weeks 1 through 5, the Jags have really tried to limit his workload whenever they can. So I would assume this game will be no different. He's only been averaging 3.3 yards per carry since week 6, so he's been very inefficient as well. But this is a great matchup. The Bengals ranked 30th in DVOA against the run, so he could offset a decrease in volume by having a couple explosive runs here. His ceiling might be capped because if the Jags do get up, say 10 plus here, I mean that's what they're favored by. There's a chance they'll just give Dearness Johnson some extra carries and a run-heavy game script. So I'm a bit cautious about him, but he should have a big game. So that's why I'm staying away. I would just keep an eye out for Dearness Johnson rushing props. If it's anything, say, below 20.5 yards, I'd consider taking the over.
Well, we want to get to the props that you both are not staying away from. We'll get your official picks in a few. But first, Nick, why don't you give us one that just missed the cut?
Yeah, this one's a little disgusting, truly disgusting. And with a hat tip to our guy, Charlie DeSturco, who had a nice double-digit Debo 2 touchdown. I'm going to go with a double-digit anytime touchdown. That's Jake Browning plus 1,100. Like I said, it's disgusting. I haven't bet it yet. That's why it's my backup prop right now. But we are showing value on this prop. We are showing plus 950 as fair value. Browning does have 6 scrambles this year on his 54 dropbacks. So that's, 1 every 9 dropbacks. If he were to keep up that rate in his 33 projected attempts, that would be about 3.5 scrambles or so that we would get. And there's, of course, always a chance that he gets a run near the goal line, maybe a QB sneak, not necessarily a tush push, but maybe a QB sneak in there. So we're kind of projecting him for around 4 rushes, which does give him, like I said, about a 10% in that neighborhood chance of getting a touchdown. So plus 950 fair value on Jake Browning.
Jake Browning, the former Washington Husky. Obviously, a touchdown would put a nice cap to the weekend for that program. They're getting ready to take on Texas. Sean, which prop almost made the cut for you, and is it as disgusting as what Nick provided?
No, definitely not as disgusting as a Jake Browning prop. But I was considering Joe Mixon over 19.5 receiving yards. The Jaguars have a very good run defense. They rank first in DVOA against the run, actually. But they do cough up quite a few receiving yards to opposing backs. 11 different running backs have top 20 or more yards against them through the air. And it would certainly make sense for Jake Browning to lean on, dump offs to Joe Mixon here. However, and this is a big however, because this is why I'm not betting it, Travion Williams has really started to eat into Mixon's passing down work. So Mixon's been held under a 50% routes run rate in 2 straight games. So I don't really know who's going to be getting the dump offs from Jake Browning here, but somebody is. And that kind of feeds into my actual prop for this game, but this is a prop I was looking into. I liked it, and then I, shied away. So I'm really torn on this one.
Very torn. And we're going to find out what the actual prop is in just a minute. But Nick, it's your turn. Why don't you give out your official pick for tonight?
Yeah, well, Sean was leaning towards that Mixon over receiving yards. I'm going to mix in a water here, and I'm going to take Mixon's longest rush under 12.5 yards. He has cleared this line in 7 of 11 games, but each of the first 4 weeks he cleared this, when the season was new, fresh legs. And since then, he's cleared it in just 3 of the 7 games. And in fact, those 3 are the only 3 rushes he has had since week 4 that have been longer than 12.5 yards. So in 102 attempts, he has just 3 rushes that clear this line. It's a lot of wear and tear for a guy who's been in the NFL 7 years, nearly 1,600 rushing attempts. So I just think at this point in the season, he's getting kind of banged up. A lot of usage there, his offensive line as well. And now he faces a Jacksonville defense that's number 1 in the NFL in defensive rush DVOA. They've allowed over 12.5 in 7 of 11 to running backs, but the 3 of the 4 times they stayed under, they were favored, of course, heavily favored here. So definitely a good chance that Jacksonville just keys in on Jake Browning, forces him to throw, and in other words, stops the run game and forces Jake Browning to beat them. So I really think Cincinnati is going to struggle to possess the ball. Last week, Cincinnati only had 22 minutes against Pittsburgh of possession time. We could see the same here.
Mix in a water, of course, a reference to our show Happy Hour, which is on Wednesdays here on Action Network. Is it true, Sean, that you liked this prop as well, but Nick beat you to the punch?
Yeah, it is true, and it's a bit unfair. Nick has a Eastern time zone edge against me right now. Usually we're both in the same time zone, but he has a 3-hour head start. But I am right there with him. I will be betting this along with him. Just to piggyback on Nick's great points, Mixon had seen a stacked box, just 18% of his rush attempts this season when Joe Burrow's under center, which was 7th lowest out of 65 qualified running backs. But last week with Jake Browning under center, defenses, don't have to worry about him as much throwing it deep. So he saw a stack box on 62% of his rush attempts, which would be just over Derrick Henry's 60% stack box rate, which would have been the highest in the NFL. So I am expecting the Jaguars to do the same tonight. It's going to be really tough for him to clear this.
Well, I'm glad that you both are in agreement and wanting to bet this. Although, Nick, is it really fair to say this is just an East Coast thing? Aren't you pretty much on top of things like every week on the show?
I'm usually in the document first before Sean. And
we don't need to get into the behind-the-scenes politics here.
That's right. Last time I wanted to go with a longest rush prop, under or over. It was also the same one Sean wanted, so I deferred to him on that one. So I get this one this time.
Listen,
yes.
Sean, believe it or not, people want to know you're behind the scenes. So it's my duty to share such things. But what is your official prop?
So obviously I love the Mixon one. I like this one as well. And it's TE Higgins under 3.5 receptions. Looks like the best price currently is -115. But he's, returning from a hamstring injury that's prevented from playing in the last 3 games. He was finally able to return to practice on Thursday, but he was still limited. It was Friday he was able to get in a full practice. So I would imagine he's not going to see his typical 85% route participation in his return. Hamstring injuries are always tricky. They can be easily re-aggravated. So if anything, they're going to limit his work and his game back. It's also a matchup against the Jaguars defense that plays zone at the 4th highest rate. Higgins is the only main Bengals pass catcher that sees a lower yards per route run against zone than versus man. So it's a little tougher matchup for him. Plus, I think he's going to be the main pass catcher impacted the most by Joe Burrow's absence. Higgins only sees an average separation of 2.3 yards, which is the 6th lowest among qualified wide receivers and tight ends. I can't imagine Jake Browning or the Bengals necessarily want him throwing the ball into tight windows, contested situations to TE Higgins. I already mentioned the Jaguars allow a ton of receiving yards opposing backs. So I think just leaning on dump offs to Mixon, short passes to Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase makes the most sense here than, chucking it up deep to Higgins. So I'm projecting him closer to 3.2 receptions with about a 60% chance to stay under this. But again, I think he just has a really low floor in this spot coming back from a hamstring injury.
Well, Sean is betting Nick's official prop. Nick, would you bet Sean's?
Absolutely. I was actually talking about this with Charlie earlier, that I was trying to find a good TE Higgins fade. I was considering under his yards, but I think I like the receptions a little bit better there, so I will be tailing Sean on this one.
Well, good thing you didn't steal that one from him, too, because then
right.
Sean would have had nothing to say. Sean Koerner, thank you for joining the show. Nick Giffen, thanks for hanging with me in studio.
Yeah, let's do it again.
You can catch Nick Giffen back here in studio tonight for Bet What Happens Live, where he gives his expert opinion on what to bet in the moment. So make sure you have the Action app or YouTube channel open heading into halftime.
We are here, the Shepherd and the Knucklehead in Hoboken, live. We loved this game from the start.
You loved it Sunday. I definitely did not.
I was going to let you get there.
You were right. 49ers, this was a good spot. This is a good bet.
Buffalo +3 at Kansas City.
I went straight bet that 3.
So now we're taking our advice from the fans in the audience.
These are our people.
Chicago +5 against Detroit.
You sick.
Dude, on Tuesday, I guarantee we're having this conversation, and I guarantee we're saying, oh yeah, the Bears in the division at this number. This is the side you take until 1:45 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Love you.
What a night. The Favorites podcast was live in person in Hoboken, New Jersey. And Chad Millman and Simon Hunter are here with me in person. It's so great to have you guys in studio. Simon, you had a good time last night, huh?
Had a good time, survived it, and I made it another day at this company.
That's a win.
Which is always the fear.
Right.
I really don't want Simon to have to do something where I'm like, oh my God, I got to have a conversation. So the fact we lasted 5 hours in a bar with, several hundred fans of the Favorites and of Action, and we're both here to tell the tale, that's a win.
It's a win.
That's a cover in our book.
Definitely. Huge success, win, cover, all of it. Obviously, you host the Favorites podcast, Chad, right before Sunday Night Football. So let's react a little bit to what happened. We see the Chiefs lose to the Packers. Packers were 5.5-point dogs, end up winning outright. So I guess the question is, are you more impressed with what Jordan Love and the Packers are doing, or more concerned with the Chiefs right now?
Oh, I would say much more impressed with Jordan Love. Like, we've been seeing this, and Simon and I have talked about this, and a lot of folks at Action, if you follow people in the Action Network app, you could see all week they were picking the Packers at +6, +6, +6. Stuckey and Raybon talked about this on the Action Network podcast too, on the Sunday Six Pack. And so the Packers and Jordan Love have been building towards this sort of primetime moment against a top-flight team. The Chiefs actually thought the last couple weeks have been playing better in the second half offensively. So to me, it was just they ran into a team that matched up well, and Jordan Love made some great throws when he needed to make the throws. And then Mahomes threw one bad interception. The Packers easily could have lost that game last night if not for that. So,
your reaction?
Yeah, I thought it was just a well-coached game, too, by the Packers, where they were, I think it was the end of the second quarter, so it might have been like a minute left. Instead of trying to force the field goal, they punted it down to the 1. They didn't let Mahomes do what Mahomes loves to do, which is the double-up, which is they would have got 3 before half, then scored that touchdown to start the second half, and then all of a sudden the game would have been tied. The Packers didn't allow that, so I thought it was great coaching, and Jordan Love, Chad nailed it. It's like the guy started 6 for 6. LaFleur and him are just very well connected right now. The scheme, everything's clicking. So as an Eagles fan, I would honestly say I'm more worried about Green Bay right now in the playoffs than I am about the Detroit, which is crazy to think, but I think both of them are just going in different directions right now. Detroit, everything feels tough. They're struggling little things, especially defensively. Green Bay, they've gotten healthier and they're playing better right now. So, yeah, if you're a Green Bay fan, you have to be really elated.
Well, let's talk about this coming week because the Chiefs host the Bills. Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites. Simon, what do you do with that line?
I go to our guy Evan, right? the Mahomes is under a 3-point favorite or as a dog. He's 19-7 ATS in his career. So, I wanted to take the Bills. I was hoping this was going to get to 3.5. It's gone the other way, Chad. So the value now is on the Chiefs.
Yeah, look, we talked about this last night on the show, immediately talking about and pinpointing the Bills at +3 against the Chiefs, and that felt like the right side. The wise guys believe that. They bought the Bills at +3. Now it's at 2.5. At 2.5, you start to think, oh, wait, maybe I want to take the Chiefs. It's not unlike sort of what happened with the Eagles and the Niners, where when the line was at +3, a lot of people were taking the Eagles, and when it was at 2.5, they were taking the Niners. We saw that didn't really matter in the game. And so, look, the Chiefs have struggled, but they've been a better team all season than the Bills. The Bills have been so inconsistent. So are you buying that the Bills are back? or are you buying that the Chiefs are going to get healthy?
Well, you brought up Eagles 49ers. I hate to mention it to you again, Simon, but look, we talked about it. It was a win-win because you gave out 49ers -3, which I tailed, so I'm happy. But that being said, Eagles next week have the Cowboys. What do you expect from that?
Honestly, I hate, it pains me to say it, but they are supposed to lose this game. It's just really hard to sweep a team in your division, right? And let alone a team that's so talented like that Cowboys team. So the person that likes to hate on Dak, which I like to do, it's not in the regular season. Dak's great in the regular season. It's the playoffs where he struggles. So in this matchup, I think people need to understand the professionals are going to bet the Cowboys. We've seen this number go from 2.5 last night to now it's up to -3.5 for this Cowboys team. So the public is going to be happy to take a 10-2 Eagles team at +3.5 against Dallas divisionally, but I'm just not there. I have this modeled at -4. So to me, if you're still thinking, is there value here on the Cowboys? I do think there's still half a point of value on this Cowboys team.
You also have to think about Jalen Hurts left the game yesterday. Marcus Mariota came in. What is the status of his health going to be next week? Lane Johnson played, but clearly was not effective. The Niners picked apart the middle of that Eagles defense, which is what everyone said they were going to be able to do. The Cowboys have been unstoppable offensively. They will have seen what the Eagles weren't able to do against the Niners. So it's a tricky spot for bettors. It's a tricky spot for the Eagles.
Could be a huge statement game as well for Dak Prescott in the MVP conversation, which also came up on the Favorites pod yesterday. Let's talk about tonight. Jags, 10-point favorites at home. What's your take on the side or total if you have, Simon?
I want to take the under. I don't know how Cincinnati is going to move the ball and score. The number has come down a little bit, but I would still take the under. And we already talked yesterday about the Jaguars. If you missed the 8.5, the 9.5, I don't know if I'd take the 10. It's such a dead number now at this point. You've really missed the value, and it could easily land on 10. I think the bookmakers are hoping it does. They're not hoping for a blowout here. They're hoping for a close game. So, yeah, I don't really have a pick for the side, but I am going to be on the under in this matchup.
Same.
Same?
Yeah. I actually bet the under. I pulled the trigger too early. I bet the under at 38.5, and it got down to 38, and then all of a sudden it started getting bet up, got up to 39.5. So I wish I had a better number, but I'm still going to be on the under.
Chad Millman, Simon Hunter of the Favorites podcast. So great to have you in studio. It was great to hang out with you in Hoboken. We're going to do it again, I think.
We will.
Thanks for coming by.
Looking ahead to NFL Week 14, odds are already on the board, and I talked to an odds maker on this Sunday night here in Las Vegas about several of the key matchups this week, the more notable games coming up in this next week. And specifically, we talked about the Sunday night football game. What the odds maker did with this game is opened the Cowboys -3. Dallas quickly moved to -3.5 and then kind of settled at 3 -120. I'm talking to you late Sunday night. I think there's been a shift back to Dallas 3.5 even money with this odds maker. So he said that this isn't a clear-cut one-sided betting game. He said the public still has trust in Philly overall, which the public should. Philly is 10-2, so there's plenty of reason, and they're pretty good against the spread as well. I think 7-3-2. So, look, the public's not going to jump off that bus just yet, but certainly there's going to be a fair amount of public play on Dallas this week. What he did say is Eagles-Cowboys will be a very high-handle game, and if the favorites have a good day Sunday, it'll be interesting to see where all the tickets and money, probably a lot of it to Dallas, will run to Dallas on Sunday night. Kansas City, as we talked about, upset road loss against the Packers in Week 13. Opened -3 at home against the Bills for Week 14. Now, that opening number went up before Kansas City lost to Green Bay 27-19. And Buffalo coming off a bye and desperate with a 6-6 record. The oddsmaker said the Bills are power rated much higher than that 6-6 record, but he expects the book is going to be rooting hard for Buffalo here. He doesn't think the public's going to jump on board, even though Buffalo is got a better power rating than its record. Public's going to be all over the Chiefs, especially coming off a loss and returning home.
To the NBA, quarterfinals of the in-season tournament tip off tonight. The Celtics have the shortest odds to win the cup at +330, and they take on the Pacers at 7:30 Eastern. In the West, the 2-seeded Kings are at +490, and they take on the Pelicans at 10 Eastern. And now we turn things over to Action Network senior writer Matt Moore for his NBA State of the Union.
My fellow NBA fans and bettors, I'm honored as always to speak to you and give you the State of the Union, the NBA, and I have good news to share this week. The in-season tournament worked. It worked. I can't believe it, but Adam Silver actually pulled it off. You want results? How about this? Ratings are up 25% year over year in November on both League Pass and on national TV. Kings Warriors, the highest rated NBA game in November in the last 2 decades. How about record attendance in the month of November as fans filled the arenas, even with those courts, Maria? They generated real buzz with this tournament. And even if this knockout stage, which I think will be absolutely fantastic, does somehow disappoint, the format has worked. It brought real stakes to the NBA regular season in November, gave us something different. It sets up what should be an absolutely phenomenal week of games, especially the ones in Las Vegas. We'll be on the ground there with Action Network covering it for you. The NBA in-season tournament is officially a success. It's all good news in our association, however, as I have to let you know that Luka Doncic is currently an extreme favorite up there with Nikola Jokic for MVP. And unfortunately, this is all smoke and mirrors. Look, the numbers are great on Luka. 31-8-8. Spurred a 30-0 run versus the Thunder the other night. What an incredible game after the birth of his daughter. Did they win that game? No, they did not. The Mavericks are beating teams by just 0.6 points per 100 possessions with Luka on the floor. For all of the numbers and all of the stats, it's not translating into them winning the minutes by margin. I'm not saying that Luka Doncic isn't phenomenal. I'm not saying he's not a top 10 player in the NBA. He very clearly is. But to put him up there with Jokic and Embiid, and yes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the top of the MVP odds is ridiculous. The Mavericks have a good record this season, but they're 3-4 versus teams over 500. That includes a comeback win versus the Magic missing 2 starters and the Rockets who are fading fast. Unfortunately, it's time to just admit to ourselves as an NBA nation that Luka Doncic is not, so far, a real NBA MVP candidate.
As always, Matt, we appreciate the realness in your State of the Union. As it turns out, I agree with you when it comes to Luka Doncic. Mavs are 6th right now in the West, and I think as an MVP, your team should be at least a top 3 seed in either conference. So I would love to disagree with you here, but I don't. I absolutely feel like Luka is a little bit overhyped right now. Those odds are very surprising, being the second shortest odds behind Nikola Jokic. Really? Anything else you want to get off your chest at this time?
Yeah, a couple teams that I think that are under the radar that deserve notice from bettors. How about the top 3 teams against the spread this season? We're a quarter of the way through the season. People tend to be like, oh, it's early. Oh, it's early. Oh, it's early. We're a quarter of the way through the season. The 3 top teams against the spread are the Thunder, the Nets, and the Magic. And the Nets are actually tied with OKC. OKC makes sense. They've been absolutely underperforming, or overperforming rather, the spread over the last couple of seasons. They're so well coached. Absolutely phenomenal. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an MVP candidate, as I mentioned. Chet Holmgren, the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year. The Nets are the one that's surprising. They're winning by absolute 3-point volume. They've been absolutely incredible. And the Magic are another team. You look at this. This is 2 small markets, and a team in the Nets is completely overlooked. Those are teams that you can find value betting on night to night. The market has not yet adjusted to the Thunder, the Nets, or the Magic.
I love that tip. There's been a lot of surprises thus far in the NBA. Some teams outperforming expectations, which has made it very exciting. Matt Moore, thank you so much for joining us.
God bless you, and God bless the association.
Thanks. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green.Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to do it for Green.Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today, and I'll see you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.